My uncle's socket wrench set was laid out on his workbench in size order, smallest to largest, each tool returning to the foam cutout that had held it for 30 years. I was organizing them for the estate sale, or at least that's what my Aunt Sharonda thought I was doing in the garage, while the real family gathered in the living room to discuss important matters. My hands moved automatically, cataloging each tool, remembering the Saturday mornings Uncle Raymond had taught me to rebuild a carburetor, to fix a leaky faucet, to measure twice and cut once. He treated me like I had a brain. The rest of the family treated me like I was waiting tables until I figured out what to do with my life. I'm Agent Vick. I'm 41 years old. And I'm a supervisory special agent with the FBI's Criminal Investigative Division, specializing in organized crime and racketeering. But my family doesn't know that. They think I work some job with the government that I'm too embarrassed to discuss in detail. I let them think it. For years, I let them think it. And Uncle Raymond was the only one who knew better. The funeral had been that morning, a simple service at the Methodist church where Uncle Raymond had served as deacon for 20 years. My Aunt Sharonda had sat in the front pew, flanked by my two cousins, Candice and Celine. Accepting condolences with the practiced grace of someone who'd been rehearsing this role her entire marriage. I'd sat 3 rows back, alone, in the dark suit I wore to federal court when I was testifying about RICO cases and asset forfeitures. No one asked why I was alone. No one asked why I'd arrived separately. They'd stopped asking about my life years ago, right around the time they'd decided I was the family disappointment. It hadn't always been this way. When I'd graduated from college with honors, majoring in criminal justice, my family had been proud. And I'd been accepted to the FBI Academy at Quantico. They'd thrown me a party. But somewhere between my first field assignment and my 10th year with the Bureau, their pride had curdled into something else. Confusion, maybe? Or embarrassment that I wouldn't discuss my work at family dinners. Still with the FBI? My aunt would ask, her tone suggesting I should have moved on to something better by now. Still there. Any promotions? Some. Well, that's nice, dear. Candice, tell everyone about your new position at the hospital. And Candice would talk about her job as a hospital administrator, and Celine would talk about her interior design business, and I would sit quietly and eat my green beans and wonder when I'd become invisible. Uncle Raymond never played that game. He'd been a union electrician for 40 years, a man who understood that some work couldn't be explained in cocktail party conversation. He'd understood that classified meant classified, not embarrassed. Every few months, he'd call me. Michaela, how are you really? Can't talk about most of it, Uncle Ray. Don't need the details, just need to know you're okay. I'm okay. Good. Come help me fix the deck this weekend. Sharonda's been after me about it for months. So I drive to their house, a craftsman bungalow on the east side with a wraparound porch and a yard full of tools Uncle Raymond could never quite put away, and I'd spend Saturday replacing boards and sinking screws while he'd work beside me, not asking questions, just being present. He'd left me the house. I knew this because I'd helped him draft the will 3 years ago, sitting at his kitchen table while Aunt Sharonda was at her book club. He'd been diagnosed with prostate cancer. The prognosis was good, but he was a man who believed in preparation. Sharonda gets the investments, he'd said. She'll need the income. The girls get the cars and the furniture. But the house goes to you. Uncle Ray, I can't. Yes, you can. This is my decision. You're the only one who ever actually helped me maintain this place. The only one who knows where the water shutoff is, how to reset the breaker box, which step on the back porch is rotted. This house needs someone who'll take care of it, not sell it to the first bidder. That's you. Your daughters? My daughters have never changed their own oil. They're good people, Michaela, but they don't value what I value. You do. I'd argued. He'd been firm. We'd had the will drafted by his attorney, not the family lawyer, but someone independent. He'd told me not to mention it to anyone. Let's not complicate things while I'm still breathing. He'd lived another 3 years, good years mostly. The cancer came back last fall. 6 weeks ago, he'd called me at work. Michaela, time's getting short. I'd taken emergency leave. Spent 2 weeks helping Aunt Sharonda with hospice care, keeping vigil, holding his hand while he drifted in and out of consciousness. My cousins had visited on weekends, staying for a few hours before returning to their busy lives. I'd stayed. The night before he died, he'd squeezed my hand. "You're going to be okay, kiddo. Better than okay." "I know, Uncle Ray. They're not going to understand about the house." "I know. Don't let them make you feel guilty. I gave you what you earned." He died the next morning, peacefully. And I'd stepped out of the bedroom to find Aunt Sharonda already on the phone with the family attorney, scheduling the will reading for after the funeral. Now here I was, in Uncle Ray's garage, organizing tools, while his widow and daughters planned the distribution of his estate in the living room. They'd physically excluded me from the conversation. Aunt Sharonda had put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Why don't you make yourself useful in the garage, dear? We have complicated things to discuss." Complicated things. As if I were too simple to understand estate law, I had a law degree. I testified in federal court about RICO statutes and complex financial fraud schemes. But sure, estate distribution was beyond my comprehension. I'd orchestrated this entire scenario, not the funeral. Death doesn't wait for convenient timing, but everything after. I'd mentioned to Aunt Sharonda that the estate attorney probably needed to meet with everyone while we were all together. I'd suggested the house as the location, more intimate than a law office. I'd volunteered to stay out of the way during the official proceedings. And now I was in the garage, waiting, listening to the muffled voices through the wall, checking my watch. The attorney, Mr. Jarman, a man I'd never met but whose reputation I'd researched thoroughly, had arrived 20 minutes ago. Any moment now. I heard Aunt Sharonda's voice rise sharply. "What do you mean the house isn't included in this distribution?" Perfect. I set down the wrench I'd been holding and walked to the door connecting the garage to the kitchen. Through the doorway I could see into the living room. Mr. Jarman sat in Uncle Ray's reading chair, a leather folder open on his lap. Aunt Sharonda stood by the fireplace, flanked by Candice and Celine. All three women were staring at papers in their hands. The house, along with the property taxes paid through next year and a $10,000 maintenance fund, is designated separately in a codicil to the will, Mr. Jarman was saying. It's not part of the estate distribution to the immediate family. That makes no sense, Celine said. Who else would he leave it to? Where is that paperwork? Aunt Sharonda demanded. Mr. Jarman pulled a document from his folder and held it up. The beneficiary is named here. Agent Vick should be present for this discussion. I stepped into the doorway. I'm here. Three heads swiveled toward me. Aunt Sharonda's face was already red. Michaela, this doesn't concern you, dear. Find something to do. Actually, Mr. Jarman interrupted gently, it very much concerns her. Ms. Vick, could you join us, please? I walked into the living room, moving past my aunt, taking a position near the bookshelf where Uncle Ray had kept his collection of vintage fishing lures. Aunt Sharonda physically blocked my path to the chairs where my cousins sat. This doesn't concern you, dear, she said again, her voice syrupy with false kindness. Find something to do. Through the doorway to the dining room, I could see Mr. Jarman gathering his papers. My cousins were leaning together, whispering, looking at documents I knew contained the distribution of investments and personal property. Everything except the house. Candice grabbed one of the papers from Mr. Jarman's folder, the codicil, I assumed. She read it silently, her expression moving from confusion to disbelief. The color drained from her face. She looked at me. It says, "Everything goes to Agent Vick?" Mr. Jarman nodded. Your uncle was very specific. The house, the property taxes, the maintenance fund, and his entire workshop contents including tools and equipment. All designated to Michaela Vick. Aunt Sharonda snatched the paper from Candice's hand, read it, looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between betrayal and rage. Agent Vick? She repeated. What does that mean, Agent? Federal agent, Mr. Jarman clarified. Ms. Vick is with the FBI, I believe? Your husband was quite proud of her work. The living room went absolutely still. The only sound was the ticking of Uncle Ray's grandfather clock in the corner, the one he'd inherited from his father, the one that had been in the family for 3 generations, the one that was apparently now mine. FBI? Celine's voice was small. Michaela, you're with the FBI? Supervisory Special Agent, I said quietly. Criminal Investigative Division. I have been for 16 years. Aunt Sharonda was shaking her head. That's not. You said you worked for the government. Some boring office job. I said I worked for the government. You assumed boring office job. Why didn't you correct us? Why didn't you ask? Candace stood up, the paper still in her hand. You let us think. All this time, we thought you were just struggling, working some low-level position, never getting anywhere. I know what you thought. And you didn't tell us? I told Uncle Ray. He asked the right questions. Aunt Sharonda's face was transforming through emotions. Anger, embarrassment, calculation. Well, that's very impressive, Michaela, but it doesn't change the fact that this house should stay in the family. I am family. You know what I mean, Raymond's daughters, his wife, people who have a blood right to his property. He made his decision. It's legally binding. We'll contest it. Mr. Jarman cleared his throat. Mrs. Tillery? I should inform you that your late husband was very thorough. He had a psychological evaluation done confirming his competency. He had 3 witnesses present at the signing. He wrote a letter explaining his reasoning, which I am required to read to all parties. Would you like me to do that now? The silence stretched out, heavy and thick. Yes, I said. Read the letter. Mr. Jarman pulled out another document. Began reading in a measured, professional tone. To my beloved wife Sharonda and my dear daughters Candace and Celine, I leave you the investments and personal property because I know you will manage them well and because I trust you to support each other financially in the years ahead. To my niece Michaela, I leave my house and workshop because she is the only member of this family who ever bothered to learn how things work. She helped me maintain this property for 15 years. She knows every pipe, every wire, every board that needs replacing. More importantly, she never asked me to explain myself, never demanded I justify my choices, never treated me like I was simple just because I worked with my hands. Sharonda, my love, you have always worried too much about what the neighbors think. You wanted Michaela to be something impressive you could brag about at book club. When she couldn't be that, or wouldn't be, because her work is classified, you decided she must be a failure. You excluded her from family planning, from important decisions, from the inner circle of this family. You did this not because she earned exclusion, but because you couldn't understand her. Michaela earned this house, not through birthright, but through showing up, through caring, through asking how things work and then learning to fix them when they broke. That's worth more than blood. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And I hope you'll all find a way to move forward. But I won't apologize for this decision. It's right. With all my love, Raymond. Mr. Jarman set down the letter. No one spoke. I could see Aunt Sharonda's hand trembling. Candace had tears on her cheeks. Celine was staring at the floor. The grandfather clock ticked. Once, twice, 10 times. Finally, Aunt Sharonda spoke. Get out. Excuse me? Get out of my house. If Raymond wanted to betray his own family, fine. But I don't have to look at you while I process it. Mrs. Tillery, Mr. Jarman began, this is actually Ms. Vick's house now. I don't care. Get out. I looked at my aunt, this woman who'd hosted every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every family gathering for 20 years. This woman who'd made me feel small and inadequate for the better part of a decade. This woman who was now screaming at me to leave a house that legally belonged to me. I'll go, I said quietly, but I'm taking the letter. I held out my hand. Mr. Jarman hesitated, then gave me the document. I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket. Michaela, Candace said, her voice breaking, I'm sorry, we didn't know. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. I walked out through the front door, down the porch steps Uncle Ray and I had repaired together 2 summers ago, to my car parked on the street. Behind me, I could hear voices rising. Aunt Sharonda crying, Celine trying to calm her, Mr. Jarman explaining legal realities in patient, measured tones. I sat in my car for a long moment, hands on the steering wheel, looking at the house that was now mine, the house I'd helped maintain, the house where I'd learned that family wasn't always about blood. Sometimes it was about who showed up, who listened, who understood that some work couldn't be explained but still mattered. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Ms. Vick, this is Kenneth Jarman. Your uncle asked me to give you this message after the reading. They'll be angry at first. Give them time. They're good people who made bad assumptions. Some of them will come around." He believed in second chances. "For what it's worth, I think you earned that house 10 times over." I stared at the message. Uncle Ray, still taking care of me even after death. Still believing the best of people, even people who'd spent years underestimating both of us. I didn't go back inside that day. Or the next. I returned to my apartment, to my work, to a case involving a multi-state fraud operation that demanded my complete attention. I testified in federal court. I coordinated with field offices in 3 states. I did my job, the job my family had spent years dismissing as some vague government position. 2 weeks later, Candice called. "Michaela, it's Candice. Can we talk?" About? About everything. About how we treated you. About Dad and the house, and about you, who you actually are. I don't think... Please, I know we don't deserve your time, but I'm asking anyway. We met for coffee. She cried, apologized, explained that she genuinely thought I was struggling, that she'd been trying to help by not asking questions that might embarrass me. She'd thought she was being kind. "You were being condescending," I said. "There's a difference." "I know that now." "Do you?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Mom's not ready to apologize. She's still hurt. She feels betrayed by Dad." He tried to explain it in the letter. "I know, but understanding something intellectually and accepting it emotionally are different things." She traced a pattern on her coffee cup. "Celine wants to meet with you too. She has questions about your work, what you can share anyway." "Why?" "Because we realize we don't actually know you. We know this version we invented, struggling, directionless Michaela who needs guidance. But the real you, the person who Uncle Raymond knew, we never met her." "Whose fault is that?" "Ours. Completely ours." She looked up at me. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to actually know you, if you're willing." I thought about Uncle Ray's letter, about second chances, about his belief that people were good, just sometimes confused. "One coffee," I said, "and then we'll see." Over the next 6 months, I met with my cousins separately, slowly. Candice wanted to understand my work. Not the classified operations, but the structure, the career progression, the reality of federal law enforcement. Celine wanted to understand why I'd hidden it, why I'd let them make assumptions. "Because correcting you meant constantly defending myself," I told her. "It meant every family dinner turning into an interrogation about my choices. It was easier to just let you think what you wanted to think." "That's really sad, Michaela." "Yes, it is." Aunt Sharonda never called, never apologized. I heard through my cousins that she'd moved to an apartment across town, that she visited the old house sometimes and stood on the sidewalk looking at it, but never knocked on the door. I'd started spending weekends there, slowly making it mine, repainting rooms, updating fixtures, keeping Uncle Ray's workshop exactly as he'd left it, tools in size order, everything in its place. I'd invite my cousins over sometimes, show them the work I was doing, let them help if they wanted. It wasn't easy. There were awkward moments, failed conversations, times when old patterns reasserted themselves and someone had to stop and recalibrate. But we were trying. That had to count for something. 8 months after the funeral, I was replacing the rotted step on the back porch, the one Uncle Ray and I had been planning to fix before he got too sick, when Candice showed up with Celine and Aunt Sharonda. I stood up, hammer in hand, watching them approach. Aunt Sharonda looked smaller than I remembered, older. Her face was drawn, tired. "Michaela," she said, "may I come in?" I looked at the house behind me, my house. The one I'd earned through 15 years of showing up, of helping, of caring enough to learn how things worked. "Yes," I said, "you can come in." We sat in Uncle Ray's kitchen, my kitchen now, around the table where he'd drafted his will, where he'd taught me to balance a checkbook, to read electrical diagrams, to value work that couldn't be explained in cocktail party conversation. "I've been angry," Aunt Sharonda began, "at Raymond, at you, at myself, mostly at myself." I waited. I spent 30 years married to a man who worked with his hands, and I was always a little embarrassed about it. About him? He was brilliant. You knew that, but he wasn't impressive in the way I wanted him to be impressive, and I did the same thing to you. I wanted you to be something I could brag about. When you weren't, when I thought you weren't, I decided you must be failing. I wasn't failing. I know that now, but admitting that means admitting I was wrong for years, that I excluded you, dismissed you, treated you like you were less than. And doing that at my own husband's funeral reception. She stopped, wiping her eyes. I don't know how to apologize for something that big. You just did. That's not enough. No, I agreed, it's not, but it's a start. We sat in silence for a while. The kitchen smelled like coffee, and the lemon cleaner I'd used on the counters that morning. Outside, I could hear birds in Uncle Ray's carefully maintained garden. "The girls tell me you've been working on the house," Aunt Sharonda said finally. There's a lot to do." "Raymond always said you had good instincts for this kind of work. He taught me well. He loved you very much." "I know." She looked around the kitchen, at the cabinets we'd refaced together, at the window he'd helped me replace, at all the small repairs and updates that represented 15 years of Saturdays and summer evenings. He was right to give it to you. I didn't want to admit it, but he was right. I didn't say anything. Sometimes silence is the most generous response. Could I come by sometimes? To visit? I wouldn't interfere or try to change anything. I just miss being here. I thought about Uncle Ray's letter. About second chances. About his belief that people could grow, could change, could learn to see beyond their assumptions. "You can visit," I said. "But Aunt Sharonda, if you come here, you come as my guest, in my house, and you treat me like someone who knows what she's doing." She met my eyes, nodded. "I can do that." We finished our coffee, made awkward small talk, made plans for Thanksgiving, at my house, if I was willing to host. I said I'd think about it. After they left, I went back to the porch step, measured, cut, fitted the new board into place. It was solid work, honest work, the kind of work Uncle Ray had valued. The kind of work that had earned me this house. I finished as the sun was setting, washing the craftsman bungalow in gold light, stood back and looked at my work, looked at the house Uncle Ray had loved, had maintained, had given to the one person who'd bothered to understand what that maintenance meant. My phone buzzed. A text from Candice. "Thank you for letting Mom visit. I know that wasn't easy." I texted back, "Nothing worth doing is easy. Dad used to say that." I know, he taught me that too. I put my tools away in the workshop, each one returning to its designated spot in the foam cutout. The socket wrench set was still there, gleaming in size order, still waiting for someone who knew how to use them properly. I locked up the workshop and went inside my house, Uncle Ray's house, now mine, and thought about family. The one you're born into, and the one you build, through showing up, through caring, through learning how things work, and then fixing them when they break. Sometimes those families overlap, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it takes a funeral and a will reading and 8 months of awkward conversations to figure out which kind you have. I was still figuring it out, but I was doing it in my own house on my own terms, with tools I knew how to use and a foundation Uncle Ray had helped me build. I turned off the light in the workshop. The silence in the house was not empty, but rich. The memory of those who loved this place and firmly knew their rights here. I needed nothing more.